Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest waves of change. Marcus Thompson never imagined that helping his intoxicated boss get home safely would lead to a conversation that would transform not just his career, but his entire family's future. What she said to him the next morning over coffee would challenge everything he thought he knew about workplace loyalty, personal sacrifice, and the power of unexpected allies in corporate America. This is the story of how one night of simple human decency became the catalyst for a journey that would take a struggling single father from the mailroom to the boardroom, proving that sometimes the right person notices when you do the right thing. Marcus Thompson pressed his badge against the scanner and heard the familiar beep that granted him access to the gleaming corporate tower of Henderson & Associates. At 32, he had been working the night shift in the mailroom for 3 years, a job that paid just enough to keep his 8-year-old daughter Zoe in a decent school district and their small apartment rent current. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he made his way through the marble lobby, nodding to the security guard who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. The elevator climbed silently to the 15th floor, where Marcus began his nightly routine of sorting, filing, and distributing documents throughout the building. Henderson & Associates was one of the city's premier consulting firms, the kind of place where million-dollar deals were discussed over artisanal coffee and where the parking garage held more luxury cars than most people would see in a lifetime. Marcus knew he was invisible to most of the executives who worked here during the day, just another face in a company of over 200 employees. His shift typically ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., perfect timing that allowed him to be home when Zoe got ready for school and to pick her up in the afternoons. Being a single father meant juggling responsibilities that often felt overwhelming, especially since Zoe's mother had walked out when their daughter was just 2 years old, leaving behind only a note about needing to find herself and a forwarded address that led nowhere. As Marcus wheeled his cart through the carpeted hallways, delivering reports and contracts to various departments, he thought about the conversation he'd had with Zoe that morning over breakfast. She had asked him again why he couldn't come to her school's career day like the other parents, why he couldn't take time off during normal hours like everyone else's mums and dads. He had explained as gently as possible that his job was important and that it helped pay for all the things she needed, but he could see the disappointment in her bright brown eyes, the way she nodded and went back to eating her cereal without asking any more questions. The truth was that Marcus had bigger dreams than the mailroom. He had completed 2 years of business school before Zoe was born, maintaining a near-perfect GPA while working part-time to support his small family. When his daughter arrived and his girlfriend left, priorities shifted dramatically. School became a luxury he couldn't afford, both financially and time-wise. The dreams of working in a corporate environment, of wearing suits and attending meetings, of building something meaningful, all got packed away like childhood toys that no longer seemed practical. But those dreams hadn't died completely. During his quiet hours at work, Marcus often found himself reading the business reports and strategic plans that crossed his desk. He understood the language, could follow the complex financial projections and market analyses. Sometimes he even spotted errors or inconsistencies that he would note mentally but never voice, knowing that suggestions from the night shift mailroom guy weren't exactly welcome in the executive conference rooms. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Marcus heard the commotion from the corner office on the 20th floor. As he stepped off the elevator with his cart full of documents to be filed, he could hear voices carrying down the hallway. One voice in particular stood out, slurred and emotional, clearly belonging to someone who had been drinking heavily. Marcus recognized it immediately as Catherine Brennan, the company's chief operating officer and one of the most respected executives in the building. Catherine Brennan was something of a legend at Henderson & Associates. She had joined the company 15 years ago as a junior analyst and had worked her way up through sheer determination and brilliant strategic thinking. At 45, she was known for her sharp mind, her ability to close difficult deals, and her reputation for being tough but fair with her staff. Marcus had seen her around the building during shift changes, always impeccably dressed, always moving with purpose, always seeming to carry the weight of important decisions on her shoulders. But tonight was different. As Marcus approached the corner office, he could see through the glass walls that Catherine was alone, slumped over her desk with an empty wine bottle beside her laptop. Her usually perfect auburn hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her voice carried the thick, unsteady cadence of someone who had been drowning their sorrows for hours. Marcus hesitated outside her office door. His training told him to mind his own business, complete his rounds, and pretend he hadn't seen anything. Getting involved with executive drama was not part of his job description, and he couldn't afford to do anything that might jeopardize his employment. But as he listened to Catherine's quiet sobs and watched her struggle to focus on her computer screen, something deeper than professional protocol kicked in. He knocked gently on the glass door frame. Catherine looked up, her eyes red and unfocused. clearly startled to see anyone in the building at that hour. For a moment, they stared at each other across the threshold between the hallway and her office, two people from completely different worlds within the same company structure. "Mrs. Brennan?" Marcus said softly, using his most respectful tone. "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?" Catherine blinked several times, as if trying to bring him into focus. You're the mailroom guy," she said, her words slightly slurred but not unkind. "Marcus, right? I've seen you around." Marcus was surprised that she knew his name. In 3 years of working at the company, he could count on one hand the number of times any executive had acknowledged his existence, let alone remembered his name. "Yes, ma'am. Marcus Thompson. I was just finishing up my rounds and wanted to make sure everything was all right." Catherine laughed, but it was a hollow sound filled with bitterness rather than humor. "All right? Nothing's all right, Marcus. Nothing's been all right for a very long time." She gestured vaguely at her computer screen, where Marcus could see what appeared to be financial reports and spreadsheets. "Do you know what it's like to work your entire life for something, to sacrifice everything, and then watch it all fall apart because of other people's mistakes?" Marcus didn't respond immediately. He could see that Catherine needed to talk, needed someone to listen, and while he wasn't sure why she was opening up to him, he sensed that this moment was important in ways he couldn't yet understand. "I had to fire 12 people today," Catherine continued, her voice breaking slightly. 12 good people with families and mortgages and dreams, all because the board made some spectacular miscalculations on the Morrison account. And the worst part is that I saw it coming 6 months ago. I wrote report after report, sent email after email, warning them that our projections were too aggressive, that we were promising things we couldn't deliver. But did they listen? Of course not. Marcus set his card aside and took a tentative step into the office. "That sounds incredibly difficult. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Catherine looked at him with surprise, as if she hadn't expected empathy from someone in his position. "You don't have to pretend to care about corporate politics, Marcus. I know this isn't your problem." "Maybe not," Marcus replied carefully, "but it sounds like you're dealing with something really painful, and that makes it human, not just corporate." Something in Catherine's expression softened at his words. She leaned back in her chair and studied his face more carefully. "How long have you been working here, Marcus?" 3 years, ma'am. Night shift in the mailroom." "And before that?" Marcus hesitated. He rarely talked about his background with anyone at work, partly because he was self-conscious about his current position, and partly because his story felt too complicated to explain in casual conversation. But something about Catherine's vulnerability in this moment made him want to be honest. "I was in business school for 2 years before my daughter was born. Had to drop out to take care of her when her mother left. Been working nights ever since so I can be available for her during the day." "Fun." Catherine's eyebrows raised slightly. "Business school?" "Where?" "State University. I was studying finance and operations management." "Good programs there," Catherine said, and Marcus could hear that her speech was becoming a little clearer as the conversation progressed. "What was your GPA?" 3.8, Marcus answered, wondering why she was asking but sensing that honesty was important. Catherine stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus could see something shifting in her eyes, some kind of calculation or assessment happening behind her intoxicated exterior. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "And I want you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. Do you ever read the documents you deliver? The reports and proposals and financial statements?" Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. "Sometimes. I know I probably shouldn't, but when I'm filing things, I can't help but notice." "What do you notice?" Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that this conversation could either lead to his termination or to something he couldn't yet imagine. "I noticed that sometimes the numbers don't add up quite right. Sometimes the projected returns seem too optimistic based on the market data in the same reports. Sometimes I see contracts that seem to promise things that other departments are saying we can't deliver." Catherine leaned forward, her attention now completely focused on Marcus despite her condition. "Give me an example." "The Morrison account," Marcus said quietly. 3 months ago, I delivered a procurement report that showed material costs had increased by 18% across the board. The same day, I delivered a client proposal that was still using the old cost structure. I figured someone would catch it and adjust the numbers, but they didn't," Catherine finished. "And that 18% difference is part of what killed our profit margin on that project." Marcus nodded, feeling nervous about admitting he had been paying such close attention to details that weren't technically his responsibility. Catherine stood up slowly, swaying slightly as the alcohol affected her balance. Marcus, I need to ask you for a favor, and I'll completely understand if you say no. What kind of favor? I drove here tonight, but I'm obviously in no condition to drive home. I could call a cab, but honestly, I don't trust myself to get to my apartment safely on my own. Would you be willing to help me get home? I live about 20 minutes away, and I could pay for your gas and time. Marcus looked at Catherine's condition and thought about the risks involved. Helping an intoxicated executive get home was definitely outside his job description, and if something went wrong, it could create serious problems for both of them. But as he looked at her vulnerable state and remembered his own experiences with feeling lost and overwhelmed, his instinct to help overrode his caution. I don't need payment, Mrs. Brennan. Let me just finish my route and I'll drive you home. Catherine's eyes filled with tears again. But this time they seemed to be tears of gratitude rather than despair. Thank you, Marcus. You have no idea how much this means to me. Marcus completed his remaining deliveries in record time, his mind racing with questions about the conversation they had just shared. When he returned to Catherine's office, she was sitting quietly with her coat on, looking slightly more composed but still clearly affected by the evening's drinking. The drive to Catherine's apartment building took them through the affluent part of the city, where tree-lined streets gave way to elegant condominiums with doormen and underground parking. As Marcus pulled up to the entrance, Catherine turned to him with an expression that seemed more sober and thoughtful than it had been all evening. Marcus, what I said tonight about reading the reports and noticing inconsistencies, I want you to know the kind of attention to detail is exactly what this company needs more of. We've gotten so caught up in hitting targets and impressing clients that we've forgotten the importance of accuracy and realistic planning. Marcus wasn't sure how to respond. I appreciate you saying that, ma'am. No, I mean it, Catherine continued. I've been watching this company make the same mistakes over and over again, and tonight, talking to you, I realized something. We're so busy promoting people who look good in meetings and sound confident in presentations that we're missing the people who actually understand the work. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. I want to have coffee with you tomorrow morning. Well, later this morning, I guess. Are you free around 9? Marcus was taken aback by the invitation. Yes, ma'am. I can arrange childcare for my daughter. But are you sure? I mean, when you sober up, you might feel differently about Marcus, Catherine interrupted. I may be drunk, but I'm not stupid. I know exactly what I'm saying, and I want to continue this conversation when I can think more clearly. Meet me at the Starbucks on 5th Street at 9 a.m. And Marcus? Yes? Thank you for treating me like a human being tonight instead of just your boss. That means more than you know. As Marcus drove home through the empty streets, his mind was spinning with possibilities and fears in equal measure. He had no idea what Catherine Brennan wanted to discuss over coffee, but he sensed that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't predict. The question was whether that change would be for better or worse, and whether he was ready for whatever came next. Marcus arrived home at 7 a.m. to find his neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, already waiting with her spare key, ready to help Zoe get ready for school. Rosa Rodriguez had been a godsend since they moved into the apartment complex 2 years ago. A retired teacher with grown children of her own, she had quickly adopted Marcus and Zoe as part of her extended family, stepping in to help whenever Marcus's work schedule created gaps in his parenting coverage. You look different this morning, Rosa observed as Marcus hung his jacket in the hallway closet. Something happened at work? Marcus wasn't sure how to explain the evening's events, partly because he was still processing them himself, and partly because the whole situation felt surreal in the morning light. Just an unusual night. I might have a meeting later this morning, actually. Would you be able to watch Zoe for a couple of extra hours? Rosa's eyes lit up with curiosity and concern. Of course, mijo. But a meeting? With your boss? Something like that, Marcus replied, not wanting to get into details until he better understood what Catherine Brennan wanted to discuss. I should get some sleep before... Papa? Zoe's voice called from her bedroom. Is that you? Marcus made his way to his daughter's room, where he found her sitting on her bed in her school uniform, brushing her long curly hair. At 8 years old, Zoe had inherited her father's thoughtful brown eyes and her absent mother's delicate features. She was an exceptionally bright child, always curious about the world around her, always asking questions that sometimes made Marcus realize how much he wanted to be able to provide her with better opportunities. Good morning, sweetheart. How did you sleep? Good, Mrs. Rodriguez made pancakes with chocolate chips. She said you might be busy later, so she's going to pick me up from school today. Is everything okay? Marcus sat on the edge of Zoe's bed and helped her with a stubborn tangle in her hair. One of the things he loved most about his daughter was her intuitive understanding of situations, her ability to sense when something significant was happening even when adults tried to shield her from complexity. Everything's fine, baby. I just have a work meeting today, which is unusual for someone with my job. It might be a good thing, but I won't know until I go. Zoe turned around to face him, her expression serious. Is it about getting a better job? One where you don't have to work all night? The question hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had tried so hard to make their situation seem normal and stable, but clearly Zoe understood more about their challenges than he had realized. Maybe, sweetheart. I don't want to get your hopes up, but it's possible. I hope it is, Zoe said simply. I miss seeing you more. After Zoe left for school with Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus tried to sleep, but found his mind racing with anticipation and anxiety. What did Catherine Brennan want to talk about? Was this about his admission that he read confidential documents? Was he about to be fired for overstepping boundaries? Or was there a possibility that something positive could come from their encounter? He finally gave up on sleep around 8:30 and took a shower, choosing his clothes carefully. His wardrobe was limited, but he selected his best khakis and a button-down shirt that Zoe had given him for Father's Day, saying it made him look professional and handsome. As he looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, Marcus tried to imagine what Catherine saw when she looked at him. Did she see potential, or just a mailroom worker who had been in the right place at the right time? The Starbucks on 5th Street was busy with the morning rush when Marcus arrived at 8:55. He ordered a simple black coffee and found a table near the window, positioning himself where he could watch for Catherine's arrival. His hands were slightly shaky as he checked his phone, reviewed his mental talking points, and tried to calm his nerves. Catherine walked through the door at exactly 9 a.m., looking completely transformed from the vulnerable, intoxicated woman he had helped the night before. She was impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, her auburn hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. But when she spotted Marcus and walked toward his table, he could see something in her eyes that acknowledged their shared experience from the previous evening. Marcus, thank you for coming, she said as she approached the table. Can I get you anything else? Another coffee? A pastry? I'm fine, thank you, Mrs. Brennan. Catherine went to the counter and returned with a large coffee and a blueberry muffin. As she sat down across from him, Marcus noticed that she seemed nervous too, which surprised him. He had expected her to be completely in control, the way executives usually were in professional situations. First, Catherine began, I want to apologize for last night. You shouldn't have had to see me in that condition, and I shouldn't have put you in the position of having to take care of me. That was unprofessional and unfair to you. You don't need to apologize, Marcus replied. You were going through something difficult. We all have bad days. Catherine smiled slightly. You're very kind, Marcus, but I do need to apologize, because what happened last night was part of a pattern that I've been struggling with for several months. The pressure at work has been intense, and I've been dealing with some personal issues that have made everything feel overwhelming. She paused to take a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. But our conversation last night also reminded me of something important. This company is making mistakes, big ones, and we're making them because we've created a culture where people are afraid to speak up when they see problems. We promote people who tell us what we want to hear instead of what we need to hear. Marcus listened carefully, still unsure where this conversation was heading. You mentioned the Morrison account, Catherine continued. That 18% cost increase you spotted? If someone in our accounting department or project management had flagged that discrepancy when you noticed it, we could have saved the company over $2 million. Instead, we're dealing with massive losses, and I had to let 12 people go. I should have said something, Marcus offered. I saw the problem, but I didn't think it was my place to. Exactly, Catherine interrupted. You didn't think it was your place. And that's the problem with our entire corporate structure. We've created artificial barriers between different levels of the company that prevent valuable information from flowing where it needs to go. Catherine leaned forward, her expression becoming more intense. Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation all morning, and I want to make you an offer. But before I do, I need to know something. Are you still interested in finishing your business degree? The question caught Marcus off guard. Yes, I'd love to finish school someday. But realistically, I can't afford the tuition and I can't afford to take time away from work. I have Zoe to think about. What if there was a way to do both? What if Henderson and Associates had a program that allowed employees to complete their education while working? with the company covering tuition costs in exchange for a commitment to stay with the firm for a certain number of years after graduation. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. Does the company have a program like that? We do for management track employees, Catherine said. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Marcus, I want to offer you a position in our operations analysis department. It would be an entry-level analyst position, but it would be a significant step up from the mailroom. You'd work normal business hours, the salary would be almost double what you're making now, and you'd be eligible for our education assistance program.
Marcus stared at Catherine, unable to process what he was hearing.
Mrs. Brennan, I don't understand. Why would you offer me something like this? Because last night you showed me something that I've been looking for in candidates for months. You have attention to detail, you understand financial data, and you're not afraid to identify problems even when pointing them out might be uncomfortable. Those are exactly the qualities we need in our analysis department. Catherine pulled a manila folder from her briefcase and slid it across the table. These are the job specifications and requirements. The position would start at $58,000 a year, with full benefits and potential for advancement based on performance. You'd be working directly under Sarah Chen, our senior operations analyst, and your primary responsibility would be reviewing project proposals and financial projections for accuracy and feasibility. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the job description and salary information. The numbers seemed impossibly good, almost too good to be real. Mrs. Brennan, this is incredibly generous, but I have to ask, is this because of what happened last night? Because I helped you get home? Catherine's expression became serious.
Marcus, I want to be completely honest with you.
What happened last night showed me something about your character that impressed me. This offer is not charity, and it's not just because you were kind to me when I was vulnerable. This offer is because I believe you have the skills and potential to excel in this role, and because this company desperately needs people who can think critically and identify problems before they become disasters. She leaned back in her chair. However, I also want to be transparent about something else. There will be people in the company who question this promotion. They'll wonder how someone moves from the mailroom to an analyst position without following the traditional path. Some of them will assume it's favoritism or that you're not qualified. You need to be prepared for that skepticism and ready to prove them wrong through your work. Marcus thought about Zoe, about the possibilities this opportunity could create for their future. He thought about finishing his degree, about having a career instead of just a job, about being able to attend school events and career days like other parents. But he also thought about the risks, about the possibility of failing and losing even the stability they currently had. What would I need to do to accept this position? He asked. First, you'd need to complete some basic competency assessments to satisfy HR requirements. It's mostly a formality, but the company needs documentation that you can handle the analytical components of the job. Second, you'd need to give 2 weeks' notice in your current position to ensure proper transition coverage. Catherine paused, studying Marcus's expression. But most importantly, you'd need to believe that you can succeed in this role. This won't be easy, Marcus. You'll be working with people who have advanced degrees and years of experience. You'll need to learn quickly, ask questions when you need help, and be willing to put in extra effort to prove that you belong. Marcus thought about the conversation he'd had with Zoe that morning, about her quiet admission that she missed seeing him more. He thought about the dreams he'd packed away when life got complicated, and the possibility that those dreams might not be gone forever, after all. I want to try, he said finally. I want to accept your offer. Catherine smiled, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, her smile seemed completely genuine and unguarded. Excellent. I'll have HR prepare the paperwork and schedule your assessments for early next week. You can start in your new position 3 weeks from today. As they stood to leave, Catherine extended her hand to shake Marcus's. Marcus, I want you to know that I have complete confidence in this decision. You're going to face challenges, and there will be people who doubt you, but I believe you have what it takes to succeed. Walking back to his car, Marcus felt like he was moving through a dream. The conversation had lasted less than an hour, but his entire life trajectory had just changed dramatically. He thought about calling Rosa to share the news, about picking Zoe up from school early to celebrate, about all the things that would be different now. But he also felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Catherine Brennan had taken a significant risk in offering him this opportunity, and he knew that his performance in the new role would reflect on her judgment as much as his own abilities. He would need to work harder than anyone else, learn faster than anyone expected, and prove that her faith in him had been justified. As he drove home, Marcus began mentally preparing for the challenges ahead. He would need to review financial analysis techniques, brush up on spreadsheet software, and probably spend his evenings studying to make sure he could keep pace with his new colleagues. But for the first time in years, those challenges felt exciting rather than overwhelming. When he arrived at his apartment complex, Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting on her balcony with a knowing smile. "So, Mijo, how did your meeting go?" Marcus looked up at her and grinned. "Rosa, I think our lives just changed." The following Monday morning found Marcus sitting in a sterile conference room on the 14th floor of Henderson & Associates, facing a panel of 3 HR representatives and Sarah Chen, the senior operations analyst who would become his direct supervisor. The competency assessments that Catherine had mentioned were spread across the table in front of him, consisting of financial analysis problems, spreadsheet exercises, and case studies that would determine whether he was truly qualified for the analyst position. Marcus had spent the weekend preparing intensively, reviewing his old business school textbooks and practicing Excel formulas until his eyes burned. Zoe had been incredibly excited about the possibility of her father's new job, asking endless questions about what an analyst did, and whether this meant they could finally afford to go to Disney World like her friend Jessica's family. Marcus had tried to manage her expectations, while also allowing himself to hope that this opportunity would lead to the better life he had always wanted to provide for her. Sarah Chen was a petite woman in her early 30s with an MBA from Northwestern and 5 years of experience at Henderson & Associates. She had a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and somewhat impatient with employees who couldn't keep up with her rapid-fire analytical style. As Marcus introduced himself and took his seat, he could see her evaluating him skeptically, clearly wondering how someone from the mailroom had caught Catherine Brennan's attention. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah began, "I want to be upfront with you about something." Mrs. Radiology said, "Brennan has asked me to give you a fair assessment, and I intend to do exactly that. But I also want you to understand that the Operations Analysis Department maintains very high standards. If you join our team, you'll be expected to perform at the same level as colleagues who have advanced degrees and years of relevant experience." "I understand," Marcus replied, trying to project confidence despite his nervousness. "I'm ready to prove that I can meet those standards." The first assessment was a financial modeling exercise that required Marcus to analyze a complex business proposal and identify potential risks and opportunities. As he worked through the spreadsheets, he found himself drawing on knowledge he hadn't used in years, but also applying the practical insights he had gained from 3 years of observing how theoretical concepts played out in real business situations. The case study involved a fictional company considering an expansion into international markets, with multiple variables affecting projected profitability. Marcus worked methodically through the data, identifying inconsistencies in the assumptions about currency exchange rates and noting that the proposal seemed to underestimate the regulatory compliance costs in several target countries. As he presented his analysis to the panel, Marcus could see Sarah's expression shift from skepticism to interest. His conclusions were not only accurate but included observations that went beyond the basic requirements of the exercise. He had identified several risk factors that the other candidates had likely missed, drawing connections between different aspects of the business model that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of operational complexity. The second assessment focused on process improvement, asking Marcus to review a workflow diagram for a customer service department and recommend efficiency enhancements. Having spent years observing inefficiencies in various departments at Henderson & Associates, Marcus found this exercise particularly engaging. He identified bottlenecks in the approval process, suggested technological solutions that could automate routine tasks, and proposed a restructured reporting hierarchy that would reduce communication delays. "Your recommendations are quite comprehensive," one of the HR representatives commented. "Can you walk us through your reasoning for the technology implementation suggestions?" Marcus spent 15 minutes explaining his analysis, referencing specific software solutions and cost-benefit considerations that surprised the panel with their specificity and practicality. He had clearly done extensive research beyond what was required for the assessment, demonstrating both intellectual curiosity and genuine commitment to understanding the role. The final assessment was an unexpected addition to the standard evaluation. Sarah presented Marcus with a real project that her department was currently working on, a complex analysis of cost overruns on the Morrison account that had been the source of Catherine Brennan's distress the previous week. "This is actual company data," Sarah explained. "I'm going to give you 30 minutes to review these documents and provide preliminary recommendations for how we might prevent similar problems in the future. This isn't part of your formal assessment, but Mrs. Brennan specifically requested that we get your perspective on this situation." Marcus felt a rush of excitement as he recognized familiar reports and proposals that he had delivered during his mailroom rounds. But now, instead of simply filing these documents, he had the opportunity to analyze them comprehensively and contribute to solving the problems he had observed from the periphery. Working with focused intensity, Marcus created a timeline of the Morrison project, identifying key decision points where early warning signs had been overlooked or dismissed. He traced the progression from initial proposal through implementation, noting patterns of communication breakdown and unrealistic deadline pressure that had contributed to the cost overruns. His final presentation to the panel was detailed and persuasive, recommending a 3-phase review process that would catch discrepancies before they became expensive mistakes. He suggested implementing regular cross-departmental meetings where different teams could flag potential issues, and he proposed a standardized reporting format that would make it easier to compare projections across different projects. These recommendations are surprisingly sophisticated, Sarah admitted after Marcus finished his presentation. You've identified several systemic issues that our team has been struggling to articulate. How did you develop this level of insight into our operational challenges? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his answer would either enhance or undermine his credibility with the panel. For the past 3 years, I've been delivering documents throughout this building every night. I've seen the same types of reports cross my desk dozens of times, and I've noticed patterns in the mistakes and oversights that seem to occur repeatedly. I may not have had the opportunity to participate in the decision-making process, but I've had a unique perspective on how information flows through the company and where communication breaks down. The honesty of his response seemed to resonate with Sarah, whose skeptical expression had been gradually replaced by something approaching respect. That's actually a valuable perspective that we don't often get from traditional candidates. Most of our analysts come directly from academic programs or other consulting firms, so they understand the theory but haven't observed the practical implementation challenges. After the assessments were completed, Marcus was asked to wait outside while the panel discussed his performance. 20 minutes felt like hours as he sat in the hallway, replaying his answers and wondering whether he had done enough to prove his qualifications. Through the conference room's glass walls, he could see animated discussion among the panel members, but their expressions were impossible to read. When Sarah finally emerged from the room, her demeanor had completely transformed from the cool professionalism she had displayed earlier. Marcus, I have to admit that I was prepared to be disappointed by this evaluation. When Mrs. Brennan told me she wanted to promote someone from the mailroom to our analysis team, I was skeptical about whether such a transition could work. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, preparing for rejection. But, Sarah continued, your performance today was exceptional. Not only did you meet the technical requirements for the position, you demonstrated analytical skills and practical insights that would be valuable additions to our department. I'm recommending to HR that you be offered the analyst position immediately. Relief and excitement flooded through Marcus, but Sarah held up her hand to indicate she wasn't finished. However, I want to be clear about what this opportunity entails. You'll be working closely with me on complex projects that require precision and attention to detail. You'll be participating in client meetings where your analysis will directly influence major business decisions, and you'll be expected to continue developing your skills through ongoing education and professional development. Sarah paused, studying Marcus's face carefully. This is a complete career transformation that will require dedication and continuous learning. Are you prepared for that level of commitment?
Absolutely, Marcus replied without hesitation.
I've been preparing for an opportunity like this for years, even when I wasn't sure it would ever come. I'm ready to prove that your confidence in me is justified. Good, Sarah said with a slight smile. Because your first assignment is going to be analyzing the Henderson portfolio for the quarterly board review. It's due in 6 weeks, and it's the kind of project that can make or break an analyst's reputation in this company. As Marcus left the building that afternoon, he felt a combination of exhilaration and terror that reminded him of the day Zoe was born. His life was about to change dramatically, and while the possibilities were exciting, the responsibilities were equally daunting. He would need to prove himself not just to Sarah and the HR department, but to colleagues who would inevitably question his qualifications and wonder whether his promotion was truly merit-based. The drive to Zoe's school gave him time to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. In less than a week, he had gone from being an invisible night shift employee to a member of the operations analysis team with a salary that would transform their financial situation. But more importantly, he now had the opportunity to build the kind of career he had always dreamed of. The kind that would give Zoe pride in her father and open doors for her own future. When Zoe climbed into the car after school, her first question was about his morning. "Did you pass your test, Papa?" Marcus looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, her hopeful expression reminding him of everything he was working to achieve. Yes, sweetheart, I passed. And it looks like our lives are going to be very different from now on. Zoe's face lit up with joy. Does this mean you won't have to work at night anymore? That's right, baby. I'll be working normal hours, which means I can help you with homework and maybe even come to some of your school events. Can we call Mrs. Rodriguez and tell her? She's going to be so happy. As they drove home, Marcus thought about Catherine Brennan and the risk she had taken in offering him this opportunity. He was determined to prove that her faith in him had been justified, not just through his technical performance, but through his dedication to excellence and continuous improvement. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was moving towards something meaningful, rather than just surviving from paycheck to paycheck. The boy who had once dreamed of working in corporate America was finally getting his chance to see if those dreams could become reality. Marcus's first day as an operations analyst began at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than his official start time. He had arrived early to familiarize himself with his new workspace and to review the Henderson portfolio materials that would consume the next 6 weeks of his professional life. The 14th floor felt completely different during business hours, buzzing with activity and conversations that he had never been part of during his nighttime rounds. His desk was located in an open workspace area, shared by 6 other analysts, each with multiple monitors displaying complex spreadsheets and financial models. The contrast between this environment and the solitary, quiet nature of his previous job was striking. Here, collaboration and communication were constant, with team members regularly discussing projects across their shared workspace and moving fluidly between individual analysis and group problem-solving sessions. Sarah Chen had left a stack of reference materials on his desk along with a detailed project outline that made Marcus realize just how significant his first assignment would be. The Henderson portfolio analysis involved reviewing the financial performance and strategic positioning of 12 major client accounts, identifying trends and patterns that would inform the company's approach to similar projects in the coming year. The analysis would be presented directly to the board of directors, making it one of the most visible projects in the operations department. As Marcus began working through the initial datasets, he became aware that his new colleagues were observing him with curiosity and skepticism. Conversations would pause when he walked by, and he could sense discussions happening about his unusual path to the analyst position. The whispers weren't necessarily hostile, but they carried the undertone of people trying to determine whether he belonged in their professional environment. Jennifer Walsh, a Stanford MBI who had joined the company 6 months earlier, was the most direct in her questioning. During his second day, she approached his desk during the lunch break when most of their colleagues were away from the workspace. "Marcus, can I ask you something? I heard you came from our mail room, which is pretty unusual for this department. How did you end up getting promoted to this role?" Marcus looked up from his analysis. Recognizing that his response to this question would likely be repeated throughout the office, and would influence how his colleagues perceived him going forward. "I was working night shift in mailroom while trying to support my daughter and complete my business degree, Mrs. Gard." Brennan noticed that I had been identifying inconsistencies in financial reports during my document delivery rounds, and she offered me the opportunity to prove that I could contribute to the analysis team. "So you don't have a completed degree?" Jennifer's question was posed neutrally, but Marcus could hear the implicit judgment. "Not yet. I'm 2 years into a business program with a focus on finance and operations management. The company is supporting me in completing my degree while I work in this position." Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "That's interesting. It's just that most of us have advanced degrees and several years of consulting experience before joining this team. I'm sure you can understand why people might wonder about the hiring criteria." Marcus felt his jaw tighten slightly, but kept his voice even. "I understand completely. That's why I plan to prove my qualifications through my work rather than my credentials. I think the Henderson analysis will provide a pretty clear demonstration of whether I can perform at the level this position requires." Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into the portfolio analysis with an intensity that impressed even Sarah Chen. He arrived early and stayed late, not because he was required to, but because he was genuinely fascinated by the complexity of the business relationships he was examining. The Henderson portfolio included companies in industries ranging from manufacturing to technology to healthcare, each with unique operational challenges and market dynamics. As Marcus dug deeper into the financial data, he began identifying patterns that his colleagues had missed in previous analyses. His perspective as someone who had observed document flow throughout the company gave him insights into communication gaps and process inefficiencies that weren't apparent from the financial statements alone. He cross-referenced contract terms with implementation timelines, noting discrepancies that suggested systematic problems in project management across multiple accounts. One discovery in particular caught Sarah's attention during their weekly progress review. Marcus had identified a correlation between client satisfaction scores and the timing of key deliverables, showing that projects delivered more than 2 weeks behind schedule had a 60% higher likelihood of contract non-renewal, regardless of the quality of the final output. This is a significant finding, Sarah told him as they reviewed his preliminary analysis. Client retention has been a major concern for the executive team, but previous studies focused on pricing and service quality rather than delivery timing. How did you think to examine this relationship? When I was delivering documents, I noticed that the most urgent requests usually involved catching up on deliverables that were already overdue, Marcus explained. I started wondering whether our internal definition of successful project completion matched our clients' expectations, and the data suggests there's a meaningful gap. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying Marcus with a new level of respect. Have you considered expanding this analysis to include communication frequency during the delivery delays? I'm wondering if proactive client communication during setbacks might mitigate some of the satisfaction impact. I actually started looking at that yesterday, Marcus replied, pulling up another spreadsheet. Projects where account managers increased communication frequency during delays showed a 25% lower client dissatisfaction rating, but only if the increased communication started within 48 hours of the first missed deadline. Marcus, this is exactly the kind of insight that makes analysis valuable to business operations. You're not just reporting what happened, you're identifying actionable patterns that could influence future performance. As word of Marcus's analytical discoveries spread through the operations department, the skeptical whispers began transforming into genuine interest and respect. Jennifer Walsh, who had questioned his qualifications during his first week, approached him with a collaborative rather than challenging attitude. I'd been hearing about your Henderson analysis findings, she said. Would you be willing to share your methodology for correlating client satisfaction with delivery timing? I'm working on a similar project for the Morrison postmortem, and I think your approach might be applicable. Marcus spent an hour walking Jennifer through his analysis process, explaining how he had structured the data comparison and identified the statistical relationships. As they worked together, he realized that his colleagues weren't inherently hostile to his presence. They were simply protective of professional standards and wanted to ensure that the team maintained its reputation for excellence. The real test of Marcus's integration into the team came during a high-pressure client presentation 3 weeks into his tenure. Henderson & Associates was competing for a major contract with a manufacturing company, and the operations team had been asked to present their analysis of the prospective client's operational challenges and opportunities. Sarah decided to include Marcus in the presentation team, partly to give him exposure to client-facing work, and partly because his analysis of similar manufacturing accounts had revealed insights that could differentiate their proposal from competitors. The night before the presentation, Marcus stayed late to rehearse his section and to ensure that his analysis was bulletproof under potential client questioning. The client meeting took place in Henderson's main conference room, with 6 executives from the prospective client company and 8 representatives from Henderson, including Catherine Brennan. Marcus had not spoken directly with Catherine since their coffee meeting, though he had seen her in the hallways and exchanged professional greetings. Her presence at the client presentation added an extra layer of pressure, as he knew she would be evaluating whether her decision to promote him had been justified. When Sarah introduced Marcus as the analyst responsible for the operational efficiency recommendations, he could see mild surprise on the clients' faces. At 28, he was younger than most senior consultants, and his background clearly differed from the typical Henderson consultant profile. But as he began presenting his analysis, focusing on specific inefficiencies in the client's current workflow and proposing targeted solutions, the room's attention shifted to the substance of his recommendations. Mr. Thompson, the client's chief operations officer, interrupted during Marcus's presentation. You've identified several bottlenecks in our current process that our internal analysis missed. How did you develop such detailed understanding of our operational challenges? Marcus had prepared for this type of question, knowing that his credibility would depend on demonstrating genuine expertise rather than just theoretical knowledge. I spent considerable time analyzing comparable manufacturing operations across our client portfolio, looking for patterns in efficiency gaps and successful improvement implementations. Your company's challenges are similar to issues we've seen in other mid-size manufacturing firms, but with some unique characteristics related to your supply chain complexity. He pulled up a detailed comparison chart showing how the client's operational metrics compared to industry benchmarks and to other Henderson clients in similar markets. Based on this analysis, I believe implementing the workflow modifications I've outlined could improve your production efficiency by 15 to 20% within 6 months, with minimal disruption to current operations. The client team spent the next 20 minutes asking detailed questions about Marcus's recommendations, testing his understanding of their industry and his confidence in the proposed solutions. His responses were clear, well supported by data, and demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the interconnections between different operational systems. After the client team left to deliberate, Catherine Brennan approached Marcus privately, while the other Henderson team members were discussing the presentation. "Marcus, that was exceptional work. Your analysis was thorough, your presentation was professional, and your responses to their questions showed exactly the kind of expertise our clients expect from our consultants."
Thank you, Mrs. Feed.
Brennan, I've been working hard to prove that your confidence in me was justified. You've more than proven that, Catherine replied, but I want to talk to you about something else. The client was clearly impressed with your analysis, and there's a good chance we'll win this contract based partly on the strength of your recommendations. If we do win the account, I want you to be the lead analyst for the implementation phase. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Lead analyst on a major implementation would be a significant responsibility, far beyond what most junior analysts handled in their first year. Are you sure I'm ready for that level of responsibility? I'm completely sure, Catherine said firmly. You've demonstrated analytical skills, client communication ability, and practical understanding that many consultants take years to develop. More importantly, you understand that consulting is about solving real business problems, not just creating impressive presentations. As Marcus drove home that evening, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in less than 2 months. The conversation with Zoe that morning had been about his upcoming parent-teacher conference, which he would be able to attend for the first time since she started school. The teacher had specifically requested to meet with him to discuss Zoe's academic progress and to talk about advanced placement opportunities. When he arrived at their apartment, Zoe was waiting with Mrs. Rodriguez, eager to hear about his day, and especially about the important business meeting he had mentioned that morning. "Did you win, Papa?" Zoe asked as soon as he walked through the door. "We won't know for a few days, sweetheart. But I think we presented our best ideas, and that's all we can control." "Mrs. Rodriguez says you're becoming a very important person at your company," Zoe continued. "Does that mean you're happy with your job now?" Marcus knelt down to Zoe's level, looking into her bright, curious eyes. "I'm very happy, baby. But more importantly, this job is giving me the chance to build the kind of career that will create good opportunities for both of us."
What kind of opportunities?
Well, for starters, it means I can come to your parent-teacher conference next week. And maybe we can start talking about some of those family trips you've been asking about. Zoe's face lit up with excitement, and as Marcus hugged his daughter, he realized that his success at work was meaningful primarily because of the opportunities it created for their relationship and her future. The professional validation was gratifying, but the real reward was seeing pride and excitement in Zoe's eyes when she talked about her father's career. That night, as Marcus reviewed his notes from the client presentation and prepared for the next day's work, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the chain of events that had brought him to this point. Catherine Brennan's crisis had created an opportunity for him to demonstrate capabilities that might otherwise have remained hidden. But ultimately, his success depended on his own willingness to work harder than anyone expected, and to prove that potential could be more valuable than pedigree. 6 months after Marcus's promotion to operations analyst, Henderson & Associates was experiencing one of its most successful quarters in company history. The manufacturing contract that Marcus had helped secure had not only been won, but had exceeded all performance expectations, leading to 2 additional contracts with related companies and generating over $8 million in new revenue for the firm. Marcus had indeed been appointed lead analyst for the implementation, and his innovative approach to operational efficiency had become a model for similar projects throughout the company. The transformation in Marcus's professional standing was remarkable, but the changes in his personal life were even more significant. He and Zoe had moved to a larger apartment in a better school district, and for the first time since becoming a single father, Marcus felt financially secure enough to think beyond immediate survival. Zoe was thriving academically and socially, having made several close friends and joined the school's advanced math program. On a crisp Friday morning in November, Marcus received an unexpected email from Catherine Brennan requesting a meeting in her office. The subject line read, "New Opportunity Discussion," which immediately triggered both excitement and anxiety. Over the past few months, Catherine had become not just his original sponsor, but also an informal mentor, offering guidance on professional development and career strategy. Their interactions had evolved from the crisis-driven encounter that started everything into a genuine professional relationship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. Marcus knocked on Catherine's office door at exactly 2 p.m., finding her standing at her window, overlooking the city skyline. She turned as he entered, wearing an expression that combined seriousness with barely contained enthusiasm. "Marcus, thank you for making time to meet. Please, have a seat. I want to talk to you about some significant developments that could affect your career trajectory." As Marcus settled into the chair across from her desk, Catherine moved to her own chair but remained standing, clearly energized by whatever she was about to discuss. "First, I want you to know that your performance over the past 6 months has been exceptional by any measure. The Henderson portfolio analysis you completed was cited in the board meeting as one of the most insightful strategic documents the company has produced this year. The manufacturing implementation project has generated more client satisfaction feedback than any project in our operations division's history. And your colleagues, including those who were initially skeptical about your promotion, now consistently praise your analytical skills and collaborative approach." Marcus felt a flush of pride, but also curiosity about where this conversation was heading.
Thank you, Mrs. Parley, Narcy.
"Brennan, I've been working hard to prove that your faith in me was justified." "You've done much more than that," Catherine continued. "You've demonstrated that unconventional career paths can lead to exceptional results when combined with talent, dedication, and the right opportunities. Which brings me to why I asked you here today." Catherine finally sat down, leaning forward with an expression of intense focus. "Marcus, the executive committee has been discussing the future structure of our operations division, and your name has come up repeatedly in those discussions. We're creating a new position, Senior Operations Consultant, that would involve leading complex client engagements and developing innovative analytical methodologies that could be applied across our entire client portfolio." Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he began to understand the magnitude of what Catherine was describing. The position would come with a significant salary increase, equity participation in the company, and the opportunity to build your own project team. More importantly, it would position you for eventual partnership consideration, something that typically takes consultants 8 to 10 years to achieve. The offer was almost overwhelming in its implications. "Mrs. Brennan, this sounds incredible, but I have to ask whether I'm really ready for that level of responsibility. I've only been an analyst for 6 months. Marcus, readiness isn't just about time served. It's about demonstrated capability, leadership potential, and the ability to generate exceptional results. You've shown all of those qualities consistently." Catherine pulled a folder from her desk drawer. "But I want to be completely transparent with you about what this opportunity would entail and what challenges you might face." She opened the folder, revealing detailed job specifications and organizational charts. "As Senior Operations Consultant, you'd be managing teams of 3 to 5 analysts on multiple concurrent projects. You'd be the primary client interface for our most complex engagements, which means presenting to C-level executives and defending your recommendations in high-pressure situations. And you'd be expected to contribute to business development by helping to identify and pursue new client opportunities." Marcus studied the documents, trying to process the scope of responsibility being offered. "What about my education? I'm still 2 years away from completing my degree." "We've actually discussed that as well," Catherine replied. "The company would accelerate your education support, allowing you to complete your degree through an executive program that accommodates your increased work responsibilities. Northwestern has agreed to accept your practical experience as partial credit toward degree completion, which could reduce your remaining coursework to 12 months. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, as Catherine outlined the details of the position, the expectations for performance, and the support systems that would be available to help Marcus succeed. As they talked, Marcus found himself thinking not just about his own career advancement, but about the message this opportunity would send to other employees throughout the company. "Mrs. Brennan, can I ask you something personal? When you offered me the analyst position, was this promotion path something you had already envisioned, or has it developed based on my performance?" Catherine smiled, seeming to appreciate the directness of his question. "Honestly, Marcus, when I first offered you the analyst position, I was hoping you would succeed, but I wasn't certain how far that success might take you. What I've learned over the past 6 months is that you have instincts and capabilities that can't be taught in business school. You understand how businesses actually function, not just how they're supposed to function in theory." She paused, her expression becoming more reflective. But I also want you to know that this promotion is happening because you've earned it, not because I'm trying to prove a point about unconventional hiring. The executive committee is recommending this advancement because they believe you can contribute to the company's growth and success at a senior level. Marcus thought about Zoe, about the conversation they'd had the previous evening, when she asked whether he was happy with how their lives had changed. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who had become like a grandmother to Zoe and who took enormous pride in Marcus's professional achievements. He thought about the night shift mailroom workers who had wished him well when he left that position, and about the opportunity to demonstrate that career advancement was possible for employees at every level of the company. "I accept your offer," Marcus said finally. "And I want you to know how grateful I am not just for this specific opportunity, but for taking the chance on me in the first place. You changed the trajectory of my life and my daughter's future." "Marcus, you changed your own trajectory through hard work and dedication. I just provided an opportunity for you to demonstrate capabilities you already possessed." As they concluded their meeting and began discussing transition timelines and logistical details, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. Less than a year ago, he had been delivering mail throughout this building, invisible to the executives and managers who now sought his analytical expertise and strategic insights. The transformation seemed almost surreal, but it had been built on concrete achievements and measurable contributions to the company's success. That evening, Marcus picked Zoe up from her after-school program and took her to their favorite restaurant to celebrate the promotion. As they sat across from each other in a booth overlooking the city, Zoe asked him to explain exactly what his new job would involve and what it meant for their future. "It means I'll be helping companies solve big problems and make important decisions," Marcus explained. "And it means we'll have even more security and opportunities than we do now. Will you still have time to help me with my homework and come to my school events?" "Absolutely, sweetheart. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted this job is that it will give me more control over my schedule, which means I can be even more involved in your activities." Zoe considered this information seriously, then smiled. "Papa, I'm proud of you, Mrs. Rodriguez says you're showing everyone that hard work and being kind to people can lead to good things." As they drove home, Marcus thought about Catherine Brennan and the night that had started this entire journey. Her crisis had become his opportunity. But more than that, it had demonstrated the importance of treating people with dignity and respect, regardless of their position or circumstances. The kindness he had shown her during her vulnerable moment had been rewarded far beyond anything he could have imagined, but he realized that the real lesson wasn't about expecting rewards for good behavior. The real lesson was about recognizing potential in unexpected places, about creating opportunities for people to demonstrate capabilities that might otherwise remain hidden, and about building workplace cultures where advancement was based on merit and contribution, rather than just credentials and connections. Later that night, after Zoe had gone to bed, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing the strategic plan he would present to his first client team as senior operations consultant. The project involved analyzing operational efficiency for a healthcare system, work that would directly impact patient care and medical outcomes. As he refined his approach and considered the methodology he would recommend, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility that came with his new role, but also the excitement of knowing he was equipped to handle that responsibility effectively. He thought about sending Catherine a thank you note, then decided that the best way to express his gratitude would be through continued excellent performance and by creating similar opportunities for other employees who might be overlooked or underestimated. In many ways, his story was just beginning, and he was determined to make it a story worth telling. Outside his apartment window, the city lights stretched toward the horizon, representing millions of people pursuing their own dreams and working toward their own definitions of success. Marcus had learned that sometimes the most significant opportunities arise from unexpected circumstances, that crisis can create possibility, and that one person's willingness to take a chance on another person can transform multiple lives in ways that extend far beyond the original gesture. As he closed his laptop and prepared for bed, Marcus felt genuinely grateful not just for what he had achieved, but for the reminder that success was most meaningful when it created opportunities to help others achieve their own goals. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new responsibilities, but tonight he was simply a father who could provide his daughter with stability, opportunity, and the knowledge that hard work and integrity could indeed lead to a better life. The journey from mailroom to boardroom had taken less than a year, but the lessons learned during that transformation would influence the rest of Marcus's career and his approach to leadership, mentorship, and creating opportunities for others to demonstrate their potential. In helping his boss get home safely one night, he had discovered not just a new career path, but a new understanding of how small acts of kindness could generate profound and lasting change.